Oh, there's me on my screen. Look, hello everybody. Hi and welcome to Dux-Soup's Tuesday webinar with me, Jo Henderson, and our two LinkedIn ninjas who are lurking in the background. Scott Wright, our head of sales.
Hello.
And Giles Garnett, our head of professional services.
Hello.
Hi. Today, Scott will be talking us through the art of nurturing your first degree connections, whilst Giles and I monitor the questions coming in from yourselves. You can add those questions into the question box on the GoTo dashboard, which is on your screen. Giles and I will answer what we can as we go through, and we'll leave our favourite questions, the meaty ones, for Scott to answer at the end. We'll also paste any useful links into the chat function so you can grab these as we go through the session. If you're an existing user, don't forget to leave us a G2 review for the opportunity to win one of our limited edition caps. Simply add today's date to the comments and we'll be in touch. If you're new to Dux-Soup, then please take advantage of our 2-week free trial, which will give you access to all of the features that we'll be covering today. I will put the link in the chat as we get started, and you can click away to your heart's content. You'll receive the recording from today's session later on, so you can fast forward to any bits that you want to recap on. And I think without further ado, I'll hand over to Scott. Scott, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, wait, let me just go ahead and share my screen really quickly here. 1 second.
I'm sorry, I just realized everyone's been watching my chin. There we go, that's better. Right, here I am.
There we go. Yep, and let me just share my screen here. Can we see my screen? Yes.
Yeah, we can see.
Awesome, lovely.
All nice and clear.
There we go, perfect. And apologies for not having my camera on this time, but I'm having some camera issues, but hopefully we can go through my voice on this end. Wonderful. So for today's campaign, we're talking a little bit about first degree connections and creating drip campaigns. So what is a drip campaign, right? Well, a drip campaign is essentially a series of messages and or actions that you utilize to send out to a prospect or somebody who you want to become engaged with it. Usually you're not wanting to sell anything per se, but wanting to get them to engage back to you. Maybe it was somebody who said, I'm not interested right now, or maybe it was somebody who said that they didn't respond to you at all. The benefit of being able to create a drip campaign is that you are sort of tailoring these messages to be sort of sent out usually about 30, 60, 90 days, something like that, over a long period of time, where you're dropping little nuggets of content, verbiage, or whatever it is to keep the prospect engaged and keep them relevant. The idea of drip campaigns, as I'm sure a lot of people on this call know, it's been around for decades at this point by way of emails and phone calls and whatnot. But being able to show it to you and how to do so on LinkedIn with Dux-Soup is something relatively, it's been around for quite some time as well, but still relatively something that everybody should be doing as well. Thinking through your overall flow and the content of what it is that you're going to be sharing, though, is extremely important when doing drip campaigns, which is what I'll cover here. While you don't want to really just become spam and just plug in basically what you'd send via email, you want to think through sort of what it is you're going to be saying. Because it's on LinkedIn, it is a little bit different than email, right? You are connected to this person most likely at this moment in time, and they are a part of your network as they are a first degree connection. So it's important to sort of think through some of these strategies there and understanding, okay, maybe you don't want to send them another generic sales message, right? Maybe you need to approach them from a more content-driven area, or maybe share some article that might be relevant to their sort of actions or responsibilities that you want to talk about. Now, this feature that for most of the conversation that we will be talking about today, it is a feature with Dux-Soup that you can create on our Turbo or our cloud version to use these drip campaigns on. There are some strategies you could use in our Pro version, but we won't be covering that so much on this one. This is mainly meant for the Turbo and the cloud version, which Joe had mentioned. You can get a 2-week free trial of our Turbo version by downloading it off our website for free. Wonderful. So when creating your drip campaigns, it's important to understand and think through your campaigns and know which campaign is going to be right for the job, right? And so thinking through, like, are you going to maybe be targeting your existing first degree networks with or without Dux-Soup contacts, right? So this would be in a use case where, like, for instance, maybe you just downloaded the trial for Dux-Soup and you want to, create a drip nurture sequence for your existing first degree network, right? Well, when you're building that search or that list, right, you're going to have quite a few people in there where maybe you left off the conversation with them somewhere, but you're not sure where, right? And you're not going to go through every single individual conversation. Also, you may know that person when you first connected with them. Now, chances are you probably don't, right? But there's one or two people that are most likely in there where either you had a conversation with them, maybe it was years ago, maybe it was last week. Maybe you connected with that person because you met them at a conference, or maybe you connected with that person because they're previous coworkers of yours, right? When you're building a nurture sequence and you're targeting your first degree connections, it's important to sort of think that through a little bit, that maybe you have had some sort of interaction with them before, and you're going to want to tailor your campaign to sort of take that into consideration. For example, if I am targeting my existing first degree network, and maybe I've had conversations with them, I may want to start my messaging with, hey, not sure if you heard first name, but we just released this article, right? My messaging is saying, not sure if you heard, rather than saying, hi, first name, I have this article to show you or whatever, or would love to sort of chat in the upcoming future. Because if you've had some sort of a previous conversation with them, because again, you've connected with them previously, it's important to take that into consideration on these cases. Now, if you know that they came from Dux-Soup, right, meaning that you've enrolled them into a campaign, and you have already churned through at least one sort of campaign with them, and maybe they haven't responded to you in that campaign, and you're going to then re-enroll them into a different Dux-Soup campaign. That one, now you know that for the first bullet point, doesn't sort of apply here, because you know that they haven't had an interaction or an engagement with you. They haven't responded, and you know that you don't know them on a personal level and you weren't connected with them previously, right? Then you want to sort of build your campaign slightly different, or you can have a little bit more freedom, if you will, to build out your nurture sequence and drip campaign in that case. Then the last portion is, sometimes you may want to build your drip sequence in with your first initial campaign, right? So where you have initially a connection message followed by a series of messages after that. That could be going out from 30, 60, 90 days afterwards. And so sort of building that all up front. And there are pros and cons to sort of building it in these cases, though. The thing is if you do build it in that way, you have everything sort of packaged all together, which is nice. However, if you have your drip sequence very, very long in the initial steps, well, then if you ever want to make changes to it, you can, but sometimes it can get a little messy when wanting to sort of adjust your campaign, since being able to make sure that the adjustments are taking place inside of the queue with Dux-Soup can make a little bit of adjustment. So in short, thinking through how it is that you're going to build your drip campaign at first, and sort of putting in a little bit of preparation before jumping into it and getting it kicked off is going to be something you want to start to think of through. The next portion is personalizing your messaging on this, right? And also personalizing your approach. It's known, everybody talks about this, just don't be spam, right? Don't try to just be a continuation of what you sent via email, or rehashing some of your messages and wanting to sell them, right? It's important to realize, because it's a drip, you want them to engage with you and have a conversation with you, and then carry that conversation, right? Because they didn't reply to you on a previous note or previous messages that you've tried before. This is why we're nurturing them in these cases, right? So you want to sprinkle these sort of pieces of content or ways to get them engaged and sort of reply to you. So making sure that you're not trying to sort of sell your product right then and there, but then sharing that content or that article or whatever, that piece of nugget that you think will be insightful for them, to get them to reply based on that, right? And then try to pivot that backwards. Leverage any insights on how the list was built, right? So how your campaign was built previously, or how wherever that is that, however you're sort of enrolling these people into this nurture sequence. Maybe they were from a previous Dux-Soup campaign, like we mentioned, and that campaign was focused around a specific event, potentially, right? And you were trying to get people to attend in a webinar or an event, right? Maybe leveraging other events in these cases will drastically help. For example, hey, first name, I know you weren't able to make our or whatever event that we had X days ago, but want to know if you know of any good events coming up for lead generation or for anything like that, right? Try and get them talking to you and get them to respond, and try to leverage any type of insights on how your audience and list were built to help personalize your messaging and ensure that it can come out as personalized as possible in these cases. Also, share your content and articles with purpose, right? So this one's really, really important. You don't want to just share an article because the marketing team told you to share it, right? You want to make sure you share an article that's going to be relevant to the audience that you're targeting. And a little tip is to sometimes this seems counterintuitive, but sometimes share content that is not your own branded content. Now, I know, yes, and this isn't to say don't do that, right? Definitely, like, by all means, please make sure that you are sharing your own content. But sometimes it works really well in nurture sequences when you have your campaigns being 30, 60, 90 days out, to share content that is going to be maybe relevant to your audience that comes from a different source other than your own. It shows sort of a little bit of sort of respectfulness, and people will respond to that a little bit better than always trying to respond with just content that is branded with your own information, because they know that all comes with a caveat. Now, going back to sharing your own content, it is highly, highly recommended, if you have the means and the resources to do it, to try and create custom trackable links. Now, there's multiple different platforms to leverage this, right? I think you can do this through something like HubSpot or a lot of other tools, maybe even Bitly, although Bitly is sometimes looked at a little bit differently here and there. But if you can create some sort of a trackable link that you can leverage inside of Dux-Soup when you're creating your first degree messaging and outreach, that's going to be huge, because then you can just plug that in and you can see any of the stats that are going on in these cases. Promote communities and or events. This is one that I talk about all the time, whether it's not just promoting or creating nurture sequences, but in general for sequences, is to always be targeting and promoting different types of events, and trying to build your lists and searches for even events that maybe you're not even going to, right? And maybe you're promoting, or not even promoting, but just using that to talk about an event that's going on in somebody's neighborhood. Hey, you're going to be going to this event or going to that event, right? And asking them as a way to get them to reply. Backtracking here, our goal at this point, right, is to get them to reply, since they didn't reply to any of our previous messages, to get them engaged and get them to start engaging with us so that we can pivot that into a conversation, which leads me to my next point, which is to build your build your messaging to ensure that it is designed to strike up a conversation. And so coming in with open-ended questions of trying to strike up things about maybe the piece of content you're sharing or an event that it is, right? Hey, first thing, we just came out with this article that is about different lead generation tactics on LinkedIn. Out of curiosity, do you do any type of lead generation, right? Then 30 or 60, 90 days later, having maybe a visit or some step like that to then sort of engage on that next point there. Then sharing your content. So this is another portion here, is that when you are creating any type of content that you're going to be sharing inside of, or sorry, backtracking here, apologies. Whenever you're going to include any type of content in your campaigns, I always recommend trying to share it at least once as well, because that will help overall the engagement for when you do then send it inside of your nurture sequences as well. Then also make sure that the content, again, is relevant to the audience. And then be aware of the screen real estate that takes up the space when the message is sort of sent. And I'll cover this here when I share an example here in just a moment. But these are some of the main points to ensure. So making sure that your URL is trackable if possible, and making sure that it's relevant to the audience, right? And post about it when you can. And trying to do something like a weekly post is usually a great approach. And if possible, trying to post about stuff that maybe isn't always Dux-Soup or AKA your content related on all of those is always good tactics there. So that said, there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of build nurture drip sequences. And so the best way, I think, is for me to go ahead and show you how some of these sequences are sort of done. So what I'll do is I'll show you a sequence that I've gone ahead and built. So we'll hop over to the Dux dash here. And down here at the bottom, I've gone ahead and created a first degree nurture drip sequence here. And so in terms of setting up your campaign, again, thinking through the best type of strategy for the job is going to be important. And what I'm going to do here is this strategy will be meant and designed for people that have finished Dux-Soup campaigns already, and I'm going to now attempt to retarget them in bulk. And so what I've done here is I've created my first step to just be a visit. All right. So when this is launched, all it's going to do is just visit the person's profile. That's it. Just a simple visit, right? Because again, I've already enrolled them into some type of a Dux-Soup campaign. And now I just want to sort of bring attention to them again. And so it's going to say that Scott Wright has visited your profile in this case. After that, about 5 days later, I'm going to have a follow-up message be sent out to them immediately. And so in this case, I'm targeting people that are lead generation. They have lead generation agencies for either email or SEO, something like that. I'm not sure if they have done LinkedIn lead generation services. So I'm attempting to sort of market Dux-Soup as a service to them, right? And so I'm coming in with a question that says, ever thought about offering any type of lead generation services to your customers? We recently released an article on how agencies can leverage automation on LinkedIn to drive more conversations on the platform. Thought you might enjoy, right? Then here's the link to my article, or to the article that we have, which is a LinkedIn automation playbook, right? But notice in this message, right, I'm not saying, hey, would love to get some time with you, or would love to schedule 5 minutes when you have some time, because that's probably already inferred. And on top of that, again, thinking through the best sort of strategy for the job, I've most likely already said that in some of my other messages, and I don't want to sound like spam, right? Now, before I start talking about the rest of this campaign, one of the things is to check the link. So I want to make this as a little bit of a note. Whenever you have a message with a link inside, I always recommend trying to check to see how the link sort of looks. So I have a dummy profile here that I utilize. And so one thing I like to do is paste that in and send it. So then I can see the URL either pop up or not. And in this case, it doesn't look like the URL is popping up in this case, which is, oh, nope, there it goes. So there's what the thumbnail looks like in this case, right? So I can see a little bit on the screen real estate of how much that's going to sort of take up, right? And as you can see, I've attempted this before, where if you're maybe like resharing a post, it takes up a lot of screen real estate in this case, or maybe like an event or different items like these. These are all really important things to attempt when building out your campaign, because when this message gets sent, right, if the screen real estate or that thumbnail is taking up too much of that space, it may be hard for the person to scroll upwards. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but the person may not scroll all the way up. So you may want to think of a different strategy in terms of, including messaging with your links. But always going ahead and taking the message and either sending it to a friend or a colleague just to try out to see what it looks like is always a good step. Wonderful. Continuing back to the campaign, my third step here is that
Scott.
Oh,
Scott, can I just
please?
Can I just butt in for a second there, if that's okay?
Please.
One thing you need to also make sure when you've got a campaign like this, make sure you've got your visibility settings set correctly so people can see you're visiting them. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. Just that one. And then the other thing is the URLs. I mean, we tested the URL there in regular LinkedIn. Those thumbnails do not render in Sales Navigator. So just be aware, whichever environment you're running your target campaign in, you will see a different result there. Just a couple of things I wanted to add there, if that's okay.
That's a great point. And so coming back to exactly what Giles just said, if you have when you're creating your campaign here, you have something called regular, sales nav, and recruiter in terms of the target. These have to do with the specific inbox that you want to go ahead and set it up for, right? So I have mine set for regular, LinkedIn in this case. And then I have my campaign built like this. But yes, great points is making sure that you also have the visibility settings checked, which you can go ahead and adjust on your page by clicking on your profile here and going to settings and privacy, and you can adjust them in here. Wonderful. So coming back to this example campaign, is after that, I have a visit step maybe going out 15 days after previous, right? So that's after this previous step, that 15 days later, another visit will happen, right? Again, I do not want to be spam, right? So I want to take my time just nurturing them at this point, and we'll come back around to maybe, retarget them a little bit more here shortly, but I want to keep them engaged as much as possible. So I have a visit step now scheduled where, again, yes, it should be able to say Scott Wright has visited your profile, assuming that they have those settings enabled and your settings are enabled on the visibility status as well. Next, I have an endorse step here as well. This is a very nifty feature as well, where Dux-Soup will go ahead and endorse either the top 1, 2, 3, or bottom 1, 2, or 3 skills. So you can take your choosing here. And I have that going out 15 days and 4 hours after previous. It could be this. I think I just had it 4 hours because I was just copying it over from a different campaign. Then after that, I have 15 days later, I have another message now going out to this person where it'll say, what are your thoughts around LinkedIn lead generation services and AI? We have a client that's been using both with great success, which you can see here. And I'm sharing a case study of what our company does and a client that I think would be relevant. Again, this message is relevant to the audience that I'm targeting, right? Which is lead generation services on Dux, or to potentially use Dux-Soup. And I've already enrolled them into a campaign previously with Dux-Soup. So once I have my campaign set up like this and I'm ready to go, I can go ahead and just click save. Now I want to enroll all these people into that previous campaign that I've sort of done. So the way I'm going to do that is by coming over to the funnel flow and in Dux-Soup, which shows you all of your KPIs and metrics, pulling up the campaign that I had targeted with lead generation agencies previously, which is this one here. And what I'm going to do now is set the time range to all. And down here at the bottom, I'm going to hit copy all. That's going to copy all 468 profiles in this case. And you could also copy just follow-ups or accepted. And now that I think about it, it actually might have been easier to just do the follow-ups here, but I'll just do it this way. You can hit copy all. That's going to go ahead and copy all of the data to your clipboard, which then you can come over to a Google Sheet like this and just paste in the data like so. Now, this data can be really noisy and a lot to look at, but if you pay attention to column I here, this will show you where everybody's at. And I don't want any of the ones that have been rejected, qualified in, or responded in this case, because they most likely have responded and I've either moved them forward or not. What I want in this case is the people who have been sent out the follow-ups in this sake. The people who have accepted, they still might get the follow-up messages, so I don't want them either. And I don't want the ones that have been invited or enrolled. And it's just to save some time here, I'll go ahead and just take these and I will remove these ones. I really just want the ones that are in the follow-up stage here, because it's gone. This campaign I launched more than, I think about 2 or 3 months ago. So I want to really now target these. What I can now do is take all of these here, and I can go ahead and copy all of these URLs. I can come back to the Dux dash, and I can now hit enroll from clipboard, paste these in, and I can now scroll down and find the campaign here that I want to go ahead and enroll them into, and now go ahead and hit enroll. And Dux-Soup will go ahead and enroll every single one of those folks in this case. And we will be, hopefully it will be completed here in just a second. Let's see. Another seconds. Well, while that's loading, Giles, any thoughts or comments?
Just a couple of observations, really. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways to do this, and you know, the great thing about using the funnel flow like this, you have the ability to completely edit those lists, like Scott's shown you there. Everyone says, oh yeah, but this takes a bit of time to do this. Yeah, but once you're really well organized and you're comfortable with the campaigns you've been running, and you know which people you then want to target with your next steps, it's a very, very simple, logical process to follow. And that's one of the beauties of downloading the data. You know you're working with consistent information, and you can have real control over everything. The great thing about doing these sorts of nurture sequences is, especially if you've got a sizable network, you can be then, you're then able to send out a lot of messages. Everyone sort of thinks about, you know, LinkedIn lead generation. Oh, I'm restricted by how many connection requests I send out, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, direct messages to your existing network, you can do a lot more of that than you can cold outreach. So really, really look after your first degree networks. Really make sure that you're sending people quality information. You're not spamming them, you're not wasting their time, you're engaging with them in constructive ways. And I think that's kind of the whole piece of this. You know, it kind of brings that together insofar as, you know, make sure you're not wasting people's time, and think how you would feel if you received such an engagement. You know, if you read your message and you think, oh well, that's not a great message, that sounds a bit, then it's probably the wrong message to send. Read it back and think how you would feel receiving that from one of your contacts on LinkedIn.
That's very well said. And I'm a big proponent of that as well. It's just like it's a whole empathy type of thing. But like when you get a message, and I'm sure everybody on this call has gotten bad LinkedIn messages, right? And so when you get those, trying to think to yourself, why is this message not good, right? Then try to sort of put yourself in the shoes to be like, how can I make it better? I'm a big fan of, you know, less is more and questions, right? That's one of my big proponents. In fact, there's like this old story about Winston Churchill and the US writing some sort of letter between each other. In short, Winston Churchill says, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter, right? So less is more in this cases, right? And I'm a big proponent of that, but coming in and being thoughtful, right? But then also leveraging any insights from the people you're targeting. That's a really, really big part of it also, right? If you're able to build your list and your audience when you're building in these areas, if you're able to build it knowing that they fit this sort of demographic, or they fit, you know, whatever type of insight you can pull from them, you can now leverage your messaging and leverage that insight in these, right? In this case, I know that I've targeted them in Dux-Soup. They have not responded to me, and they are lead generation agencies, but I want to, you know, do this, so I want to share them with a piece of content, right? So sort of thinking through a little bit of that, and a little bit of a measure twice, cut once type of thing in these cases. That said, though, if you do ever encounter an issue and you need to fix it, you can always come into Dux-Soup and make any changes that you need to any active campaigns. that are currently enrolled. But just a couple of things to take into consideration, and there, we have some documentation of that on our website to go from there. One other quick thing though, in this example, right, I shared people that I've targeted before with Dux-Soup and how you can retarget them using the funnel flow. That said though, one of the other ways that I see quite a lot of people utilizing LinkedIn and Dux-Soup is where maybe they want to target their existing network. Well, if you come to here and you're building, I'm just using Sales Navigator as an example, but you can do this in regular LinkedIn too. And you're targeting your first degree connections and the current job title, you know, I'll just put in sales, whoops, not sales, that makes no sense. I'll just put in sales, something like this. And you're sort of building this out. Well, in here, right, depending on when you started using Dux-Soup, right, some of these people may have been targeted with Dux-Soup, some of them may have not. Some of them you may know on a personal level, some of them you may not. Some of them you may have had a conversation with and forgot where it left off, you know, potentially years ago when you worked at a previous company. Some of them may not, right? So kind of thinking through that logic a little bit should really, really be important, because if you did have, for instance, let's say I knew Colleen Rush on a personal level. I do not here. Do I know any of these people? No, I don't. But let's say I knew Colleen Rush on a personal level, right? Then thinking through, okay, is my message, my follow-up message, will this work for her, right? Will that fit in successfully and not look like a bot in these cases? With Mike H, right? Where did my conversation with Mike H leave off? Well, besides opening up his profile, opening up his messages, looking in there and seeing where it left off, and then creating this, like that's a lot of work. You're not going to go through all 652 results here, right? You're not going to open up every person. So instead, what I recommend a lot of these times is to just make sure that when you're creating your drip campaign, that you're sort of creating it so that it's dynamic enough to sort of fit any type of engagement based on, again, your list. Going back to the Dux-Soup, how I re-enrolled those people, I know for a fact those people did not reply to me. And I know for a fact that I wasn't connected with them beforehand. So because I know that, I can create my message with that said. But if you're creating a drip sequence for people where you're not sure, then you're going to want to take that into consideration and write your messaging appropriately. And what that basically also means is just saying, like, maybe you don't want to put hi first name here at the beginning, right? Because if you do hi first name and you know Colleen on a personal level, maybe that'll sound weird. Maybe it won't, and it'll fit. All I'm trying to help you is to ensure that you can be a little bit more personalized when going around these paths and these approaches. Right. Coming back to here. Lovely. And so that said, I think other than that, we have that's about it on the presentation here for our first degrees. We do have some guest host approaches that are really, really relevant to this. So in fact, I use some of these when creating this. These are some great approaches that you should be looking at. We're also Dux-Soup friends and affiliates, so reach out to them as well. And also reach out to us if you have any questions, but I'm sure Joe and Giles will put the links to these in the chat box here. But this also goes to show, like, A/B testing and finding out what's going to be working for you is going to be huge, right? So maybe you don't always want to start out by enrolling 4,000 people into something, right? Maybe start out smaller and enroll 100 people at a time, right? And figuring out which messaging is going to be right for you. And read some of our case studies of other people who have used our tool successfully, like Michael Simpson and Tyrone as well, to go ahead and leverage this. Right.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying here. So Michael Simpson and Tyrone Giuliani have both appeared on webinars, and we've got lots of content about them, about their different approaches. So Michael Simpson did something for us last year. His approach is, we called it like the long-term nurture approach, where he will add value, provide content, he will target his audience very specifically. And in that article there's some really, really good guidance on different approaches, different audiences, different ways of targeting. And one thing that we really liked about Michael's approach, which was very different to a lot of our hosts, is that some of his success stories, he talked about the fact he'd had 16 to 20 messages over a 2-3 year period with people, because he was just drip feeding that information, making sure that he was adding value with those prospective clients of his, and it led to great success in the end. He reported a couple of really high profile customers that he got from that approach. So that's one there. I will share that link when I stop rabbiting on in a minute. And the other one that I put on there is from Tyrone, which we did a live workshop. Oh, I think it might even be 2 or 3 years ago now, Giles.
2.5 years ago, yeah.
2.5, and he talks and still does talk about his 1-10-4 approach, where he suggests sending one message every 10 days with 4 items of content, because one of those items of content will be relevant and will resonate with your audience. I would say Tyrone's approach is probably a bit more fast-paced than Michael's, and that's purely because of the kind of clients that Tyrone works with. So there's 2 really good approaches there, I think. Yeah, Giles has beat me to it, the links, I think.
I've got the links in there. Don't worry, they're both going in there. Not to worry.
Yeah, and just this is wrapping up to the end of my point here, which is finding out what's going to be working for you is definitely important, right? And so if you're the one who feels like your clientele will respond well to having a nurture sequence where you're slowly dripping content to them out every 30, 90, 60 days, something like that, or every, on a yearly basis potentially, then 100%, or, more of a little bit of a I shouldn't say fast, I'll say faster approach like Tyrone. And even in the campaign that, I have to unstop sharing, but even in the campaign that I had just shown, I had something going out every 15 days, right? Or at least I had an activity going out every 15 days, right? Whether that was in a visit or an endorse or a message going out in these cases. Finding out what's going to be important for you and knowing a little bit on like what you think your audience may be more susceptible to and engaged in is definitely important. So take a look at these 2. They are fantastic Dux-Soup friends and definitely affiliates of ours as well with great approaches.
Fab. Well, I think we do have a few questions. Some of them we've answered as we've gone along, but I think I'm going to ask them anyway, Scott, because sure. I think they're really nice questions to share. I'm sure others will be thinking the same. So Victoria asked, does Dux-Soup work for company accounts or is it just for individuals?
Company accounts only currently at this time. But what you're able to do is in your drip campaigns, right? This is another fantastic strategy that I didn't talk about. There's so much. Sometimes it's hard to make these campaigns or these webinars, so pack so much information in such a short amount of time. But yes, what you can do in your drip campaigns is basically say, hey, go ahead and like and follow our page, or take a look at our page, something like that, and include a link for them to go ahead and hop over to your page. So currently, Dux-Soup only does operate from the personal page, not the company page, but building a drip campaign to include the company links back to your page is always a good suggestion there too.
Thank you. The next one was from Eric. How do you get old contacts into a new campaign? So you said either connected or not connected. Well, how can you enroll an old contact into a new campaign?
So to do that, you can do it in 2 ways. You can do it in the bulk way, which I just showed you, right, where you go into the funnel flow, assuming that you had engaged them through Dux-Soup before. You can engage them in the funnel flow and extract the data out like that in bulk, and then re-upload it based on what it is you want to do. Alternatively, what you can do, actually, if I could share my screen for 2 seconds. Here we go. So coming back to the funnel flow here, you can do the method that I showed you, which was copying all the data based on a campaign or the time frame here. You can also, if this loads at some point, it's always going to take a long time whenever you're sharing a screen. That's just feels like a rule of law.
You can slow it down dramatically.
Exactly, right? Another way you can also do this is you can hit copy here, and this will let you copy one individual section as well instead of copying all of it, which I didn't showcase. But you could copy maybe all of the follow-ups here, for instance, right? And then go ahead and do enroll from clipboard here and just paste those in, and that will be able to work from that end. Alternatively, you can also go through one by one and switch people through here periodically as you see fit. So if you create a drip sequence campaign, and as you're sort of managing your funnel flow here, you can be putting other people into drip sequences. So maybe this person meets a certain criteria that or process that you had established. Then you want to now go ahead and move them over. You can move them over one by one in these cases as well. Giles, did you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing to remember is you can always, from a search result in regular LinkedIn or in Sales Navigator, you've got your widget at the side as well, where you can cherry pick who goes into which campaign. So here at the sidebar, you can just scroll down, you do your search. Remember, the tricks widget only appears in a search result. It doesn't appear against all of the lists you can run Dux-Soup against. But usually it's a search result that you can run this from. That's the most logical place, because you'll go through and you'll recognize names and you think, yes, I want to cherry pick, I want those people in that campaign, especially as you're building this up for the first time. Once of course you build your process and you start building, maybe creating lead lists or saved searches or whatever it may be, that's when you'll start to evolve and get more mature and be able to do things probably at a slightly more, at a bigger scale.
On top of that, with another feature of Dux-Soup, in the tricks that pops up on the right-hand side, again, yes, this will only pop up when a list sort of is present that Dux-Soup can recognize. If you see the link, or if you see this little cool duck icon here, that is a good indicator to know that the person has been previously enrolled into a Dux-Soup campaign, right? Alternatively, if you also click on here, you can scroll through and you can see an asterisk next to the person's name, which might be a little bit harder to find if you have a lot of campaigns like myself, but you can see the sales campaign, which is currently turned off. That's why it's in gray. It's currently turned off campaign, but they have an asterisk next to their name right here, which means that that was the campaign that they were previously enrolled into in these cases. But you can at a very high level kind of go through here. I can see, okay, all these people have been enrolled into a campaign. Oh, Jason Prindle has not been, right? He's not from a Dux-Soup campaign. So you could be creating maybe multiple drip campaigns for ones who you have previously engaged and ones who you haven't, and kind of come through here and sort of enroll based on that as well as you see fit. There's multiple ways that you can leverage Dux-Soup in terms of how you want to get it enrolled.
Thank you.
There's a question just come in, which I'm going to jump onto straight away because it's also pertinent to this. It's come from Paul. If you accidentally attempt to enroll the same person into the same campaign, what happens? Twice into the same campaign? You can't. It's basically, Paul. If you try to enroll somebody into the same campaign twice, Dux-Soup will recognize that and it will just discard that enrollment activity. So that safeguard is in there already.
Would you like to talk, Giles, about the other thing connected to that, which is like, having rejected profiles on from other campaigns as well?
Yeah, so this is a way of making sure that if you have reached out to somebody in a previous campaign in any way, shape or form, you can make sure that you're only looking, should we say, fresh Dux-Soup targets or fresh LinkedIn targets. So that reject profiles from other campaigns allows you to make sure that only people you've never targeted before in a Dux-Soup campaign will get enrolled into that campaign. And that's another way of using that as well. We could also then touch upon, if you go down a step further, and also the team campaign options. If you've got a team account, there are ways to make sure that if you're sharing your team campaigns, that's also, you can't duplicate outreach across the team with the same campaign. But all of that's covered in there on our support pages if you need to explore that further.
Yep, and going back to like my example that I showed on the call where I enrolled those 97 people, right? If I had this button turned on and checked, Dux-Soup would skip over all of those people because they had been previously enrolled into a campaign, right? So I want it turned off in this case to ensure that that doesn't happen. But great point. Great.
I have another couple of questions as well. This is from Frankie, who was talking about how do we set the visibility? You kept talking about the visibility when you were showing the drip campaign stages. Can you just go back and show us?
Yeah, So that is in the me settings and privacy. And I think there's a similar version here, but your visibility settings here, and then coming into here and ensuring, like, it's a really good step to kind of go through. And I would personally just go through every single one of these as well to ensure that you're set up in the way that you want to be seen. And then I believe Sales Navigator, if you have Sales Nav, has a the similar one as well, which is also here. So privacy profile. So see what others see when viewing, select what others see when you viewed their profile in Sales Navigator, right? And so making sure you have this set up accordingly as well. Giles, did you want to add anything to that?
No, it's premium versions that you can, if you've got a premium subscription to LinkedIn, that's when you get those visibility viewing options or profile viewing options. If you're running a free LinkedIn account, then you don't have those options. You have more limited options, I should.
Thank you. And then we have a question from, I think it's Ma. Is there a way for changes that I make in existing drip campaign to be reflected in the prospects which were already enrolled into Dux-Soup campaign? So I think the question there is, if some changes are made to a drip campaign, will those where the drip campaign's already started, will it be updated for those that it's already been initiated with?
Yeah. Yes, it will. No, yes, it will. Let's use an example. I think that at least that's the way I learn, is using an example. Let's say we have a prospect, right, who's in this campaign currently, and they have gone through the visit step. They've gone through this first follow-up step, and now they're queued up for this visit, and then they're queued up for the visit step. So they haven't reached endorse and they haven't reached follow message. So they're basically right here at this step, right? If I was to change this messaging down here to something else, right, I readjusted it or whatever, then that would work for that prospect, right? However, if I was to change this messaging, that's not going to work, right? Because they have already received that. Furthermore, if I was to take this follow-up, for instance, and maybe switch it with the endorse on these cases, just like this, right? Then that will be able to work as well, assuming that they are only this step is scheduled in this case. So basically, as long as Dux-Soup is only scheduled the next step, you can change all steps afterwards for that person and for all net new people that you enroll from there.
Perfect. Yeah,
I think that's a really good way to explain it. It's a case of making sure that, you know, if you are going to edit a campaign, then great, you can edit it, and anybody new in that campaign will get the new version. But any queued up steps already sitting there in the we can't edit. Of course, you can delete them, but you can't edit those steps once they're in the queue.
And how Dux-Soup will work is when you do queue somebody up, it does not queue up every single step, right? It queues up the next step or the immediate step that needs to happen next, which is why you can change those. But
yeah, on successful completion of the previous step. Yeah.
Fab. A question from Victoria. I might put this one to Giles actually. Does Dux-Soup sync with Pipedrive, and if so, how?
Absolutely, it does. Yes, we have a wonderful integration with Pipedrive, which has been around for, I think it's been running for, I'm trying to think now, it might be nearly 4 years we've had the Pipedrive integration running. So if you just go to the Dux Dash for me a second, Scott, because that's probably the best place. Over on the left-hand side, you see we've got the CRM connections there. This, you can basically put in your Pipedrive credentials, and you can install what we call the connector. Now, when you install the connector, Dux-Soup creates a couple of new fields within your Pipedrive environment to help with all of the tracking and making sure that the correct data ends up in the right place. You can decide exactly what data comes from Dux-Soup or LinkedIn Dux-Soup into Pipedrive. So you can determine from the drop-down boxes that you see in the Dux Dash what information will come across there. So, for example, here in the screenshot, you can see that. Just go back.
Oh, I was gonna. Oh, sure. Sorry. I know I'm like moving all over the place.
So here we can see that, you know, it says there, create and update people from connected profiles. So in this instance, only first degree connections would come across if this was enabled. You only, and in this case as well, every time somebody accepts your connection request, they will automatically get added. There you are. See, it's an update contact after connecting. Remember, it's only when somebody becomes a first degree connection in LinkedIn they usually become interesting, because you can see more contact details. Those are the options that you've got there. So you can choose which data comes across out of Dux-Soup into Pipedrive. Once you've got those people in Pipedrive, you can then also have the options for any subsequent message exchanges to appear within Pipedrive, and you have the ability to also trigger actions from Pipedrive, whether that's enrolling people into campaigns or messaging them directly. So there's all sorts of different, it's like a two-way integration where we can have data coming from LinkedIn into Pipedrive and subsequently triggering actions from within Pipedrive as well.
Yep.
And we've covered
And
it in several webinars. So yeah, I'll dig out a link in a second while Scott's explaining further.
Sure, exactly. And so enroll into a campaign as this, building it back into, nurture first degree campaigns, right? Assuming that you have the LinkedIn profile field filled in with the LinkedIn URL, right? This option will become available to you. So now you can start enrolling them right out of Pipedrive if that's the case. So create maybe one nurture drip sequence where maybe you have emails or whatever it is that you're targeting from there, and then at the end you can enroll them as they cross the finish line out of Pipedrive, rather than having to find them on LinkedIn and enroll them from there. So it can be significantly easier and faster.
I've also just added the integrations link into the chat as well. There we go. There we go. I think that brings us to the end of the questions. Let me just double check no one's put a sneaky last one in. No, they haven't. That's a good session, lots of good questions there. So if I just let you know about the webinar for next time, I will just pop the link in there for you. So in 2 weeks' time, on 17th of September, we'll be looking at how to boost company followers and win business with newsletters. So this webinar is suitable for all businesses looking to fuel their sales pipeline with LinkedIn. So Victoria, who's messaged a couple of times today about the company page, definitely join this session. We'll be covering how to identify and build your target audience. We'll be looking at using Dux-Soup to grow your company followers and turn these into newsletter subscribers. We'll be looking at how to create a winning newsletter strategy and feeding your lead funnel using Dux-Soup. So I've just popped the link in there. So if you register for that, that's same time, same place, 2 weeks' time on the 17th of September. I look forward to seeing you then. What else have we got? Support services. Giles, I'll hand over to you for that one.
Oh, thank you very much. As always, if you've got any issues with Dux-Soup, with Dux-Soup, our support team is available via the website, via the email address. If we can't fix your problem virtually, then of course we would set up a support call directly with one of the team. And then if you need specific help with maybe building an integration in Zapier, or you're looking at another process, or trying to build another solution, or getting Dux-Soup to work in with your suite of tools, then we offer both the booster and technical sessions to help with those. So you can book all of that via the website, and if you book those, it'll be either with myself or Scott, depending on your time zone, I suspect.
Yep. I love those calls.
Can you be asked for specifically, or is it just to do with time?
I think it's just over time, but that would be pretty funny if we set that up. We could see who's more popular. I bet it would be Giles.
Final reminder then from me, we always like to get your reviews, and as a way of thanking you for them, we will also send you a cap. So it's really useful for new users. We have a lot of users of the free trial and people looking at LinkedIn automation tools, so they really do read your reviews. So for us, obviously, if you're in particular enjoying the product and finding it useful, it's really nice format on G2 to show the pros and cons of each of the tools that you're using. So it's a good way of sharing your insights for people to entice them, hopefully, into a free trial. So that's it from me, to share your review. And I think that's it. I'm just going to just double check on the questions again. We have had a couple of others that have just come in at the last minute. If we've got time.
Sure.
I've done my best to answer them on the fly. So.
I have you. Okay.
So hopefully, yeah. I mean, there's a specific question around messaging and safety, which I think we need to look. We need to look at that one in a little bit more detail. And there's another question there from Joshua around Pipedrive, around custom fields. Dux-Soup creates some custom fields, and through that you can see whether people have been invited or come through a Dux-Soup campaign or not. So you would see that straight away within Pipedrive.
And I've also been sent a message by Fabio about the links in the presentation. Yeah, the links won't work in the presentation, they will just to view on screen. So if you go into the blog page on the website and type in Tyrone, you'll see the options that come up there. And also if you type in Michael Simpson, you'll also be able to see his blog there. So if you can't be bothered to type in the actual blog title, you can do it that way.
Also, feel free to connect with me, Scott Wright, on LinkedIn and shoot over questions there, or if you want me to send over any links or any of that type of stuff too.
Likewise, if you want to reach out to me via LinkedIn as well, you'll get the links from me as well.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Thanks, team. Thanks everyone for joining today. Don't forget we'll be here in 2 weeks' time for the next in the series. Thank you, Scott. Good work today. Thanks, Giles, and see you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. Take care.